Welcome to the Kaur Show. We are at episode 30, which is amazing. So thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate your time as usual. I'm Ranjit Kaur from the UK, and here with me is my co-host Gurinder Kaur from Melbourne. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. How are you, Benji?
I'm doing good. How are you, Benji?
Not bad, yeah. It's really good at the moment.
That's good. So 30 episodes. It's a milestone again.
It is. It's amazing. How do we get 30 episodes in from lockdown all the way to the third lockdown?
That's right. From 2020 to 2021.
Yes, it's amazing. And there's lots happening at the moment, as usual, with the farmers' protest as well. And it's amazing news as the farmers have got the approval for the Republic Day tractor parade of, I think it's 100 kilometers, which is epic. You've heard about these news, G?
I did. I have been following up and on different pages, and I had a look on, the massive amount of like tractors that's coming up. I think it's back. If we look back in the history, I think it was about 1950 something when we had tractor parade during this time. But this is gonna create another history. I'll say in India at this stage. A massive rally, and even in Australia we have few car rallies planned as well, and some people are even planning to bring tractors. Anything happening in UK?
I think there will be a few as well, and I think the best thing about the India is the barricades will be removed on the 26th of January, and then this parade can last up to 3 days as well. So I think it's still, it's going to be an amazing day for them, a few days for them. And also, with the media still not covering this every day as it's important as it is, it's still our job to share this amazing story about the farmers' protest and the tractor parade, because we are the only constant media for everyone out there to make them aware. So that's what I think we should be doing. And even today, the Grow Twins and the Kisan Bolda on Instagram live today at 2:30 and 5 p.m. at GMT time. They will be live with the Kisans and Sangat over there at the Delhi protest. So it's going to be really good to see, like we did last week when we talked about the protest, we talked to Trolley Times as well. This week, they will be talking to the protesters over there as well.
Definitely, and I just hope that this rally just remains amazing and everything turns out to be good, because there are always some anticipations of anything bad happening as well, and I hope everything just goes safe and this revolution actually achieves Fateh Morcha. I'll say this turns out to be a victory for the farmers.
Definitely. But today's show, we have a special guest called Kuljit Kaur, and she's from the UK as well. And our topic today is dedicated to preserving and reviving Punjabi culture. And so our topic is Reet, Rivaj and Virsa. And Kuljit Kaur is the author of Ancient Nuggets of Wisdom. So let's welcome our guest to the show.
Sure. Welcome to the Kaur Show, Kuljit. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm very well this morning. Thank you.
That's awesome.
That's great. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your background as well, that would be great. Thank you.
So for those of you who I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, I'm author of Ancient Nuggets of Wisdom. My name, as you know, is Kuljit Kaur. I'm a mum of 3, and I have an absolute passion for all things Punjabi, which is what led me to writing the book.
That's amazing. And Kuljit, which country are you from at the moment? Where are you living?
I'm in the UK. I was born and brought up in the UK. Maybe Sari Parish it was in the UK. Yeah.
That's awesome. And talking about your book today, Ancient Nuggets of Wisdom. So you just mentioned that you love everything Punjabi. So what is the purpose of this book, and can you tell us a little briefly about this, and why this title is in English actually?
So the book is, as we've just said, it's called Ancient Nuggets of Wisdom, and it's a book which consists of Punjabi proverbs, or which is known in Punjabi as Akhar or Kahavta or Muhavri as well, even though there is a slight difference between Akhar and Muhavri. And the book's got 52 of these kahafta in it, and it's really to connect the people that have, perhaps children, younger generations in the West that are not so familiar, or they might even be familiar with them. They may have had their parents or their grandparents use them, but the context is somewhere lost, or where did they come about, that kind of thing. I think it's such an important part of the Punjabi language, our Akan, because this is just the way that people of Punjab spoke. We see it in the Andolan now. So many new geets have been coming up, so many Boliyan have been coming up, and they've just, come out of the current circumstances. And that's the beauty of the language. We've always spoken this way. It's been a normal part of speech. For me, growing up, this is how my grandparents spoke on a normal, day-to-day way. This is how they conversed with each other. And I was just absolutely fascinated with that, they were saying something, but the meaning, meant something completely different. And my dad's 80 plus years old now, and he still speaks in this way. And when I listen to him, sometimes I think I really felt that this was going to get lost, this part of our culture, although it goes on in India and in Punjab. But for us in the West, somewhere along the lines, it really hit me that we might lose this part, or how are we going to further it? How will we pass it on? So for me, this was my little effort, if you like, that I wanted to preserve this part of our language. I wanted to preserve this part of our culture. So I started documenting them, and they're in Punjabi, but the book itself, it's in Gurmukhi, which is the Punjabi script which is used in India. And then we've got it in Shahmukhi as well, which is because it was supposed to be, the whole purpose behind the book was that it's a shared celebration of Punjab, as it was. Because we forget that Adda Punjab is in Pakistan, so it's for Charda Punjab and for Lenda Punjab. And then we've got the English transliteration, because it's targeted mainly for the people in the West, so that they can connect back to their roots, and so that they're able to read it, or even people that aren't in the West that just can't read Shahmukhi or Gurmukhi. And then we've got a little bit of context about what the Kahavat means, how its usage evolved, and how we can apply what it means in today's day and age, and how usage has changed over time with the Kahavta, because as you can see, more Boliyan and Akan have come up now based on the Andolan, and in a few years' time they won't be relevant. The context will change, because whatever's going on in India now won't be happening. So the usage will change, but the Kahavta will remain the same, or the Boliyan and the Geet will remain the same.
Thank you so much for that. So when you say Kahavata, for the West, who absolutely have no idea what Kahavata are and hardly speak any Punjabi, how would you describe it?
So I'm sure that people, especially of my age, growing up in the West, have heard at some point or another their parents or their grandparents say something along the lines of, I don't know, Kutta vi jithe benda poonch maar ke benda. Yeah, I'm using this because I think it's a really common one, and what it means, and literally translated, it means even a dog sweeps its tail before it sits. So what does this mean? Because there's no dog, or there's nobody sweeping its tail, and what do they mean by this? But what they're trying to tell us is that we need to keep our areas clean, that we need to keep our areas tidy, and they've said it in a completely metaphorical way. So that's what a kahavat is. It's a proverb. But for the Punjabi people, it was very much a normal way of speech for them. And like I said, I've witnessed firsthand my grandparents speak in this way. For them, it's the normal way of conversing with each other. So yeah, that's what I wanted to encapsulate in the book, really, because it's such a big part of our language.
Yes, I think absolutely correct. I'm from Punjab, and I'll say my education, my half of the education in the primary school was all in Punjabi, and whatever my career I have achieved, I always say that it's because of the percentage I've received in Punjabi language, and all the tests I've taken in Punjabi, lectures, competitions, they come from that. And I can truly associate myself with all these muhavre, akan, kahavta. And this is definitely a bread and butter of, the daily communication that happens in Punjab, and truly love it. The way we, connect with each other. I think it's really important. And coming to the Western countries, and where our younger generations are now coming up, new generations, we definitely miss, communicating to them in all these, in this language, and they have no idea what Akhan, Punjabi Akhan are. So that's really important for having this kind of book where we translate, and it's in Punjabi and Shamukhi as well. You mentioned, so it's a great effort.
And I think
So
the thing is,
yes.
I think the thing is that when you can't truly understand a language until you understand all these little nuances. And I think once you read the book, or once you become more familiar with this part of the language, you just start applying it in every day, in every aspect of your life. For example, when the book was almost finished, I was having a lot of self-doubt. I was suffering from, I don't know, should we be printing this? Are people even going to be interested in it? All of those feelings of self-doubt and, self-worth started to creep in. And then my husband says to me, "Hathi nang gaya poonch reh gayi." So, so again, it's metaphorical that, the bulk, because we all know that an animal as big as an elephant has got this tiny tail. So they say, that the elephant's gone now, literally, you've just got the little tail left. So you're nearly there. And like I said, once you become familiar with this part of the language, what happens is you start applying it, you start using it in your everyday life, you start finding parts where it reflects on your day-to-day life.
No, I think it's amazing how you give those examples. Can you imagine a whole 52 of them now in a book? So tell us your relationship with the Punjabi language, because obviously I'm from England as well, like yourself. And, when I was raised from my grandparents, yes, they used to do kahavat now, but it wasn't said like, I'm doing a kahavat or anything. It was just normal speech for them, Hannah. But then, Punjabi has diluted in our families because, English is what they've gone and brought up. So what's your relationship with the Punjabi language?
So I, like you, was born and brought up in England, but I spent a lot of my summers growing up in India with my grandparents. And I spent some time living in India as well. And that's when I really became fascinated with the language. My mamaji brought me a book when I was quite young on poetry by a famous Punjabi poet, Shiv Kumar Batalvi. And the more and more I read it, and I was thinking, you cannot encapsulate these feelings and these emotions that you can in any other language, not just Punjabi. When they're translated, I think that's where the term lost in translation comes from. And I just became absolutely fascinated with not just the language, but all parts of, of Punjabi and Punjab culture. I would say I've got a really deep connection with the Punjabi language in that sense.
Awesome. So Kuljit, you mentioned that you've got 52 proverbs in this particular book. So what is the magic behind this magical number 52? Like you could choose 50 or 100 or even something like that. So why you chose like 52?
So we did. It's funny you say that, because we do have hundreds of kahaftas. So we've got book 2 coming out in a couple of months, which will have another 52. But we had to stop somewhere, and we stopped on the number 52 because it's so connected with Punjab, the language, the culture, the religion. Sikhi, we know that Guru Gobind Singh Ji gave his Khalsa 52 hukam. So, 52 rules to live by. So, and we also know Guru De Babanja Hukam Bhi Sige. We know there were 52 kavis in Guru's court. And when the city of Amritsar was established, we know that there was 52 traders were invited to the city. So we thought 52 was a really good number to stop on. And it was kind of like my way of perhaps taking blessings as well from Guru Sahib for the work that I'd created. So we thought 52 was just a great number. And the next book will also contain another 52.
That's amazing. And so what has been the reaction to the book from the Sangat?
So I've had quite a positive response from everybody. They're saying that why didn't you do this before? And the people that I have had the opportunity to meet, and people that also I already know, they've always heard me speaking this way, because for me it's quite the norm. So I've had quite a positive response, and I've had, people saying, when are you going to do something for the buliya, the traditional buliya and the lokgeet, because they want something similar. And I think, growing up in the West, I think we don't have any problem learning or adapting to the English language or the English culture, because we're so immersed in it. And I think that's why, keeping our Punjabi language alive really reinforces a sense of identity in our children, because I think growing up in the West, we shy away from our culture sometimes, in a bid to fit in, and the reason we do that is because we don't understand it fully. So people that have read the book, that they've also come and said to me that, what, I get that part of my culture now, I get that part of my language now, and it's empowering for them.
That's absolutely beautiful. So Kuljit, like after this particular book, like even speaking to your own children, do you find this book has actually helped the new generation more?
I think so. I've always, like I said, I've really tried to keep this part of the culture alive with my own children. I've got 3, and we try to speak with them in Punjabi as much as we possibly can. And, we've always used these kahawta, these colloquialisms with them to make them familiar. But when the book came out, and my youngest, who's only 6, and, she spent half a day reading through the book and really trying to understand it. So I think it's benefited them, because now they're more, if they visit India or they speak with their grandparents or their extended family, they're now in more of a position to understand, oh, I know what you're talking about, when they use these little nuances or these kahawta, because those people that are native to the language will use them. They just can't escape them.
No, that's great. Can you share some of your favorite kahavata with us?
Yeah, so I'm going to share, and I share this because it's quite relevant to what's going on in India at the moment with the Kisan Andolan. So there's a kahavat, and my dad always used to use this. It's Khadda Pita Laheda, Tirenda Ahmad Shahida. Maybe Benji has probably heard that. It's quite common. So Ahmad Shah, Ahmad Shah Abdali many times invaded India, Punjab, and so he sanctioned very heavy taxes as well. So people would say that's where the kahavat grew from. That's where that's where it was conceived. That people would say, "Jo kha liya, jo pee liya," whatever you have consumed, only that is of any value. Khada pita lahida, laha means of any benefit. Tirenda Ahmad Shahida, because whatever's left, Ahmad Shah is going to take. And the reason I say that it's familiar, with what's going on in Punjab now, it's relevant, is because now there's whatever's going on with Modi. I see so many bulliya. I mean, I logged on to Insta this morning just to post about being live today, and it came up on my feed, and this BP is singing this geet, and it's all about Modi and how he's treating the farmers. And I thought to myself, yeah, do you know what, that's what's going to happen in a few hundred years down. These geet will stay there, but the usage will change. So the usage has changed today, that, whatever you do now is of any benefit, because, we don't know what's going to happen beyond here. So Khada Pita Lahida, Tirenda Ahmad Shahida. And the one that you just showed on the screen as well is an all-time favorite. It's really close to my heart, because it says, Virda Pulliya, Sham nu Ghar Mud Aave, Ta Usnu Pulliya Nahi Kende. And, the thing with Punjabi language is, even the kahawtan change from region to region. Some people might say, Sver da pulliya sham nu ghar aaje, ta onu pulliya nahi aakhde. Hana, jan kende, we say kende. And that's been so close to my heart, because, growing up, especially in the West, you make many life choices that perhaps aren't in alignment with your culture, or they're not necessarily accepted by your culture or your family. But, when you recognize your mistakes, you acknowledge your choices, and you come back and you learn from them. That's what the kahavat is, because that's what our parents would say. They're forgiving. Okay, even if you forgot your way in the morning, but you've worked yourself out, you've made your way back home, then they're not considered mistakes, because you've learned from them.
That's absolutely correct. Do you feel, Kuljit, like there is an importance? Definitely, I think I'm not sure about the syllabus of Punjabi language in UK, but including these in the Punjabi textbooks at the school level will actually be more easier for the new generation to learn more about them.
Um, in the UK, from what I've come across, the Punjabi that is taught, it's very, you learn the alphabet, you know, you learn the Sihariya, Bihariya, all of that, and you learn how to read and write. But these are not taught. This is something that you can really experience by speaking with your elders and by spending time with them. And I definitely think it's something that would be helpful because, like I said, you cannot understand a language fully until you really understand these little bits and pieces. I do hope that it would help in, you know, the syllabus and in the way that Punjabi is taught in the West, because these differences in our language and, you know, the manner in which we speak, I think they also, you know, that not only be accepted, but they need to be celebrated, because you know, this is something that a language is something that we need to take pride in. And when we do that, I think that's one way of helping children to appreciate diversity, because you can teach them about different cultures and you can teach them that everybody's different but equally important and valuable. But, you know, respecting others begins really by respecting ourselves and our own heritage. And I think when children can communicate with their grandparents and their extended families who can perhaps only speak the native language, I think, you know, family bonds are strengthened through that way, through that manner. So it's definitely, you know, I think it can empower children. I think it can encourage a sense of self-esteem in them, because the reason that we see so many children break away from their culture in the West is because they're not fully aware of it. And once you become aware, you become empowered to speak about it and to own it a bit more. And that can also, you know, really instill a sense of self-esteem in a person.
Yeah, I truly agree with you. And I believe that these proverbs, what we call as akan, muhavre, they actually a way of learning a new language as well. They create curiosity. And as you mentioned, they empower the new generation. And Kuljit, as our topic as well today is Reet, Rivaj, Virsa, how do you think these proverbs actually connect to our Virsa?
I think, look, because so many of the kahavtan come from, you know, they've been around for years and usage has changed. So there's a kahavat, khote to digite gussa kumyarte. Yeah. So this is from a time when the kumyars, which is a potter, would transport their goods on the donkey. So this is how you learn about your culture. This is how you learn about your Reet, even through these kahavta, through lokgeet, through boliyan, because it makes you curious to want to know where did that come about from? What do you mean diggi kote tote gussa kumyarte? So you know, I'm going to translate it for our English listeners as well, that, you know, she fell off the donkey but she's angry with the potter. So how does that make any sense whatsoever? But when we start scratching, you know, bit beneath, you know, start digging a little bit deeper, and we understand, okay, so in Punjab, you know, this is how potters would transport their goods. So the potter's wife has fallen off the donkey, but she's misplaced her anger on the potter. So usage has changed, and we can apply that, and it's about misplaced anger. But it also, at the same time, so it serves as you know, it serves us today in a practical manner, but it also not only makes us curious, but it makes us understand and appreciate how life may have been.
Yes.
And there's one like, sorry, I interrupted.
No, I was just going to ask Ranjit Panji what's her say on that, because so she's also born and raised in UK and had generations mainly from UK. What do you think about Punjabi akan, muhavre? Have you heard a lot about those or just a few?
I think with my granddad, he used to say quite a bit, but it was more, I used to think it was sarcasm. Yeah, I used to think it was more like direct sarcasm, like, oh, Baba's just saying those words that, you know, it means one thing. And then I used to end up saying to him, like, just say what you want to say rather than going round in stories. But now I get why he did that. And I didn't know at the time what it was, because it was never, I'm going to tell you now, kahavta, or it was never like, it was just the bolli that they had.
Exactly.
But, you know, like a question for you is, how do you suggest or hope that we inspire and connect the next generation with the love of our language?
So, do you know what? Like I said earlier, I really think that by learning to value our own roots and our own culture, this is and once they learn it, once they know it, this will really instill a sense of pride in them. When you and once you fully know your culture, I don't think that you can be fully empowered without fully knowing your culture, because if you don't really know where you come from or your roots or all of that, there's always going to be a piece of you missing. And until you fully understand it, that's where true empowerment lies, I think, because then why do we shy about, I know I certainly, when I was younger, even when I spoke Punjabi, and even when my friends spoke Punjabi, but they didn't speak it, they had the accent where they couldn't pronounce the babba properly or the dadda properly, and they spoke it slightly off, where Benji was Benji with a papa instead of a babba. And I would dilute the way I spoke to fit in with them, because I didn't want to be the odd one out, or I didn't want to be the one that was laughed at. But that was because I didn't fully know my language, my culture, and all of that. And I think the more you get to know it, that's how you're going to instill that sense of self-esteem, and that's how you're going to have pride in it. And you're going to be empowered because you're going to know what you're talking about. It's like we read our history even now, and we see these amazing personalities that have come in our history, but for us they're unreachable. There's something that, their stories, you've heard your grandparents talk about them, but it doesn't really mean anything to you until you connect, until you understand. And we see, again, I go back to the Kisan Andolan because it's something that's happening right now, but again, you see so much resilience within the Kisans today, and it's something that we can truly witness. And that's why it's empowering, because we can see it, we can feel it, we can touch it. And the language is like that itself as well, and the culture is like that. Until you fully immerse yourself in it, you're not going to, you're not going to be able to get the advantages.
Definitely. I remember the times. Sorry, yes, Ranjit Pendi, you can go for it.
I've seen how your kids have been inspired by you too, because they also read your Kahavata. So how do you teach them, or is it you just say, are you talking to them all the time about, when you're talking to them, is it with the Kahavata, or is it let's read, let's talk about each one of them, or how do you do it with your children?
So like you said with your grandparents, where your baba would say the Kahavat and you never really knew what it, and that's how it's meant to be spoken. It's not like, come here, let me tell you a story. It's not a bedtime story. We're supposed to incorporate them in our everyday life. And so after the book, I found myself doing more and more of that with them. And I think, when I wrote the book, more came flooding to me. And, my dad had a big part to play, because I'd say, right, come on, Dad, I remember this Kahavat, but how does it exactly go? So he would then, say, oh, no, it's not meant to be like that. It's meant to be said like this. But initially, when I was talking to my kids when they were really small, when you teach a child how to speak, I would say the sentence in English, and then I'd say it in Punjabi as well. So when they were really small, I'd say, come on, let's go, chalo chaliye. And that became a norm. So in the beginning, it did feel a little bit rehearsed because you're repeating everything. But then it just became so normal. I'd say, come on, let's go, chalo chaliye. Right, get your clothes on. Come on, kapde palo hone. Right, should we have something to eat then? Roti khaiye. So I did this. I was literally repeating everything that I said, both in English and in Punjabi. So that way they were getting familiar with the words, and they were getting familiar. And now as they get older, my eldest daughter, she's becoming more and more confident in speaking, and she'll speak to us in Punjabi, and she'll say things like "Oh, tu rehn de," which again is it's kind of sarcastic, right? Now I'll leave it out, kind of thing. But you need to know these words, and I see sometimes she gets a little bit embarrassed, but we really encourage her with it. And then all the normal things that we did. We bought them the alphabet, ura, era, and I just sat down with them. I just set some time aside, sat down with them, and made it right. Well, if you do half an hour of Punjabi today, then you can get half an hour on your tablet. That kind of thing made it rewarding for them, and made it interesting for them through these Kahavta. Really, made them want to connect that in that manner.
That's absolutely right. I remember my days like as a child when we used to actually play games like, who can guess the meaning of this kahawat and asking, difficult ones. And one who wasn't able to explain, they actually lose the game. So those were actually kind of games we used to play. And there was a lot of like books we used to learn about the proverbs. And then we used to have an exam for all these as well. So there were so many things that, all these like we could learn all this by birth, we can say in Punjab, but now we don't have that, those kind of initiatives here. And also, just comparing the proverbs, and if we read Gurbani as well, there are so many proverbs written in Gurbani as well. And recently, I was talking to my daughter, and we were talking about something like Appanathi Appana, Appe hi kaaj savari. But you know how she is using that now. If I ask her to bring something for me, and she gets back to me and saying Appanathi Appana, Appe hi kaaj savari, which means I should do my work myself. So this is how they are using, but this is interesting. At least they are grabbing the thing, and this is really important. And Kuljit, we have got some comments as well, and there is one of my favorite which says "Turyate appadya." Have you heard this one?
I haven't read this one. How does it
Yeah,
go? Oh, Turyate? So, Hanji, I
Turyate
have heard it.
appadya.
Turyate Apriya. Yes, yes, I have heard it. Sorry. So it's like, you've got to take the first step. It's like once you begin your journey and imagine you've already reached the destination. So
See
taking
how
the first
powerful is that?
and I think this is the beauty of it. There's so much wisdom, and that's again why it was called Ancient Nuggets of Wisdom. Because when I really started, when I really started to look at them and really appreciate them, there is
Mm.
so much wisdom behind them. There's so much. It's almost like a little self-help guide. You will hear these kinds of take the first step and realize your dream. You see this kind of quotes on social media all the time
Yeah.
now, and it makes me chuckle sometimes because I think, yeah, that's what my Kahaftan talk about. So the
Yes.
Kahaftan have
There's
got
so
so
much
much because
wisdom. Yes.
this was the way in which wisdom was imparted to the younger generation. And Benji, you just said that in India, when you studied, you'd have to study the Muhavri Akan and you'd have to do an exam on them. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that they give you an Akan and then you'd have to put it into context or how to use it in everyday life.
Yes, we had to make sentences out of that, explaining that.
So we don't have that here in the West. And
Yeah.
like you said, that Gurbani is full of, because it's a metaphorical language. And I think Gurbani was written at a time when it was understood by the normal, by the common man. That's how Guru
Absolutely.
wrote Gurbani. But
Hmm.
we don't speak in that manner anymore. And now today we have to look at Steek and we have to look at Shabad Kosh to understand their meanings. And the same will happen for the Punjabi language in a few years down the road. It will continue to evolve. And, we won't speak Punjabi in the way that we speak it now. And we'll need tools to understand it. So I don't think when we were talking about the Punjabi language and, how can we try and incorporate it into our children's lives. And I really think that the akkar are important. But we was talking to Benji a few days ago, Manjeet Benji, about Gurbani. And when I started writing the Gahafta and putting them in the book, it made me think of that, this is how Guru talks. He talks in this metaphorical language. And because we don't know the language, because we're not familiar with it, we try and understand it on a more literal level.
No, that's right. More of a
So
literal
you
level
do
than
need
it
to,
is.
you need to really delve in deeper. You need to know the language you need to be so familiar with it so that these things flow easier to you.
Do you find that parts of India speak more Gahavata, like with the difference with Sheri and Bindu? Because
100%.
when I'm from a family that's Kisanada, so obviously the Jat life, so they were all speaking Gahavata all the time. But like when I'm married into like the Sheris, so if I said to them "tu rehne," they'd be like, "Oh, you said tu," and it'd be like, it's a saying, like but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not meant in that way. But
That's right.
I wouldn't be able to say this Gahavata to them because it's not their bully.
100%. And I think this is the thing, and it's it's become so much so in India now, in Punjab, where people don't speak Punjabi at all because it's looked upon as an ignorant language. It's looked upon as, like you said, a pinduan di boli. It's looked upon as an unpadan di boli. And people don't want to associate with that. So a few years ago, when I was growing up, Hindi had become the norm. Everybody spoke in Hindi. If you were slightly educated, then you spoke in Hindi. And now it's become English. And I can read and write Hindi as well. I can read and write Hindi very fluently. I can read and write Punjabi very fluently. And I can read and write English. And as you can see, I speak English very well, which is why I kind of like made it my personal mission to bring this. Punjabi is not Pinduan di Boli. Punjabi is not Unpadan di Boli. Punjabi is Guruan di Boli. Punjabi is Shairan di Boli. You know, it's even from the name, and I said this in one of my other interviews, you know, Idan, look at the name of the language, Gurmukhi, Shahmukhi, you know, Shah means king. This is Rajan di Boli. This is the language of kings. And because I can speak English, you know, perfectly well, and you know, my pronunciation in English is all good. So I wanted to show people that you can have English and equally you can have Punjabi. And it doesn't mean that if I speak Punjabi and I speak these Kahawtas, and I'm very fluent in Punjabi, I could, you know, I could speak to somebody from the Pind in Punjabi. I could speak to anybody. That it doesn't mean that just because I can speak the Punjabi, it means कि मैं अनपढ़ हूं या मैनूं अंग्रेजी नहीं आउंदी. Because I, you know, clearly you can have both. And like I said, Punjabi, anybody who thinks that Punjabi is a Pindu unpadan di boli, they just don't know the Punjabi because it's so beautiful, so metaphorical. It's we've had great works of literature. We've had people like Bulle Shah. I don't know, some of our audience might be familiar, others might not. But you know, we've got so much to claim to Punjabi, and it's quite ignorant for us to think that. But I think this is something that happens through colonialism, right? You know, where, you know, your culture is played down and the other person's culture is thrust upon you as sold to you as something better. And for me, again, this was also part of wanting to bring this book to life, was to really switch that and say, actually, no, we're taught that from a young age. Perhaps not so much in the West, but definitely in India, in Punjab, we're taught, like you said, when you would say, oh, Turan, then it's, you know, it's just a phrase. It's like, hang on a minute. And you were like, oh, no, you can't speak like that. That's instilled from a very young age in children of Punjab. Ke nahi beta, aise nahi bolo. Aap Hindi mein baat karo. Ye kya keh rahe ho aap? We say, oh, no, darling, you must speak in English. We can't use this language. And I can see you guys giggling because you've seen it happen, right? And it's just become this thing. So we're losing this Punjabi. And with losing the Punjabi, we're losing our sense of pride. We're losing our sense of self-esteem. Because we're part of, you can't claim Punjab without the Punjabi language. They're so intrinsically stitched together.
No, I totally agree with you. You're absolutely right. But I remember my granddad used to always say to me, "Ke main kheti kam karda haan, main unpad haan, mainu ta Punjabi nahi aundi," and that's why it's the way it is. And I think I've always been growing up knowing that. So because he never went to school, he didn't have the proper language. And so when I got married, and my in-law side are all pade likhe, so the way they speak is quite like Punjabi Hindi, very meaty, very nice. It was like, oh wow, this is a new language. We can't say Tutumeme, and we can't say any of the other like Boliya that I knew. So I think it was like another language in itself. But even like my friends yesterday from Australia said to me, Rani, do your kids speak Punjabi? And I was like, we're trying. But it's more like, it's not a trend. It's more, if we don't teach them now, they're actually not going to learn or read Gurbani properly either.
Exactly.
So it's the whole having to balance it all out now. And now trying to think about how to put this in there, the Kahavda. Maybe this will be a fun way to learn in a different way rather than just Ura, Era, Iri, Sasa, Haha. You know? It'd be different ways of learning.
Do you know, you said something so important there. You said that, you know, you'd hear your grandfather say, "Ke main ta anpada, main ta kisana," you know, and unpad does not equal to unintelligent. And I think that is so important. You know, There are things that you are not going to learn from books, such as these kahafta. Our ancestors are, we come from a lineage of poets, songwriters, we've got such a rich culture. We come from our ancestors were healers. You're not going to learn that from a 10-week online course. You're not going to learn how to become a healer or you're just not going to learn this from a 10-week online crash course and learn how to become a healer or how to become a counselor or how to become a life coach. And you see so much of that. That's wisdom, and that's wisdom that is passed through generations. And that's what Gahavstan did. That's what the Akan did. They passed on knowledge to children through this way. So it's a few words, and it's knowledge, and that you're not going to get that from books and from. You can you can learn to read and write Punjabi, but it's how are you going to apply that to your daily life? How is it going to affect? How is it going to apply to you in a practical way? So you can't gain knowledge and you can't gain intelligence necessarily through पढ़ लिख के. I'm not necessarily what people might consider in this day and age पढ़ी लिखी. I've had quite a troubled past. I didn't even go to school. I didn't even finish my GCSEs, which is what it was back in the day. I went back to college much later on in life when I did a course in English because I wanted to teach other Bibiyan. In fact, that was my mission. I wanted to teach Bibiyan how to speak English. Bibiyan that had come from India. I wanted to give them more empowerment. I wanted them, for them to feel more confident when they went out. So I went and enrolled on a course in English, CELTA, which was, certificate in English language teaching. And I taught people of other languages. And my main mission then was to teach these people that had come from India, that had come from Punjab, and they were not unintelligent people. They were really knowledgeable and really intelligent, but the only thing they didn't have was the language. So I wanted to empower that in them. And on the flip side, it's the same with from English to Punjabi. Without the language, if you're not pade likhe, it doesn't mean you're not knowledgeable. How are they going to pass down? And I think, again, I keep coming back to the Andolan, but it's because it's so relevant. Again, I think you see so many people that have stood up and spoken, and they've been so articulate in the message that they want to say. They've spoken it so well. Their delivery of what they want to say has been so precise and articulate, and people have been a little bit blown away, thinking, "Oh, in Punjab, to aine. Oh, it's kafi intelligent. It's kafi pade likhe." So pade likhe doesn't equal unpadta, does not equal unknowledgeable, and we need to really need to grasp that, because I don't know how it's been skewed over the years. But purane zamane de vich, you would go to your siane babbe pardade pardade to say, right, main aa kam karna, main kive kara. You could be pade likhe, you could have a degree under your belt, you could have a PhD under your belt, but you still need that. If you haven't got the knowledge and you don't know how to apply it, then it's of no use. I'm not saying don't go out there and get yourself educated, because you do.
No, that's absolutely correct. The intelligence comes when you have actually applied something in your life, and that comes from experience as well. And,
yeah.
Yes. And when we talk about Dade Pardade, that's definitely what they have, that experience. And if we talk about the power of a language, we can't compare any two languages. But talking just about Punjabi, I think Punjabi is such a powerful language. We got all these letters in the Punjabi language, the Penti Akari, where we have each letter for each of the sound that it can make. Like in English, if you have to do the sound of pabba, so you have to do P and H. There is nothing for pabba, one single letter in English. But if you choose any sound, and you can actually get a letter in Punjabi for that. So which shows the power of language. That's just a basic thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's a phonetic language, I think. So once you know it, once you know the akkar, you know the language.
Bilkul.
And then it's more getting into
the... We might talk a little bit in Punjabi as well. So I think Kuljit, definitely. So even ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਮਤਲਬ ਕੁਝ express ਕਰਨਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, so once you have learned Punjabi language and you have that background, my personal thing is that you really want to, express yourself in Punjabi, you don't find the words, the equivalent words in English anyway. I know ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੋਲੀ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਅਸੀਂ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਪੂਰਾ ਪੈਰਾ ਜਾਂ ਪੂਰੀ ਲਾਈਨ ਵੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਬੋਲੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਾਡਾ ਸਰਕਲ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਬਣ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਧਾ ਸੈਂਟੈਂਸ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਅੱਧਾ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਚ ਬੋਲ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ, which is very common these days ਬਣ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਫੇਸਬੁੱਕ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਟਗ ਆਫ ਵਾਰ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ why you're doing this, but I'll say ਸੁਣੋ ਸਭ ਦੀ ਕਰੋ ਮਨ ਦੀ, so another
beautiful
which is very common.
तो ये ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਸਹੀ ਕਿਹਾ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵੀ, even though I was born and brought up in England, I was born and brought up in the UK, ਤੇ since the book especially, I've done so many interviews, ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਕਦੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਜੋ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਇਜ਼ਹਾਰ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਕਤ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਥੋੜੇ ਦਿਨ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਮਾਤਾ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸੋਹਣੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਹੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ। And I think the reason behind that is because we're talking about Punjabi, because that's the subject. ਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ। And like you said ਕਿ ਅੱਖਰ, even ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਅੱਖਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਛੁਪਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈਗਾ।
Definitely. I'll come back to English now.
we do that because we can't escape that. And like Benji said, that the Punjabi we speak today isn't the Punjabi we spoke. And that's what languages are like. They're like flowing water. They're going to be evolving. The Punjabi, we touched a little bit upon Barney. So the language that's in Barney is not the normal spoken language of today. Yeah. And the language we speak today is not going to be the normal spoken language. And when Benji spoke about the akkar, which is why, and I always say this, if you want to keep the language alive, you need to keep the script alive. Learn the akkar. The language will take care of itself. Our children will speak Punjabi in some shape, way or form. It might be tutti futti Punjabi, whatever it is, but it will evolve. But ਜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਖਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦੇ, then they won't be able to. They need to. We look after the script, and the language will look after itself. Because to understand Barney even today, we can look at Steek, we can look at Shabad Ghosh, but we know the akkar in order for us to look them up. And it's the same. So in the future, for the children to be able to look up words that perhaps not heard that one, to look it up in a dictionary, Shabad Ghosh or something like that, they need to know the akkar. Because you'll hear children say the word, but they won't know how it's spelled. And when you spell it in transliteration, sometimes I've seen, little phrases being posted on social media in the Roman script. Like my very good friend of mine actually a few months ago sent me a little paragraph, and she said, "Can you translate this to me?" She said, "I don't know what this word means." And the word was dimag, brain. But she'd written it in the Roman script and it said Dimark. So Dimark. And I was like, I've not heard that word in Punjabi because I was translating it as Dimark. And then I said, "Can you put it in a sentence for me?" And it was actually a pankti, it was a good line of Gurbani. And it said something about man and dimag. And I said, "Oh, you mean dimag? There's no R in there. There's no K in there. It's Dimaag if we're forced to do it in a transliteration." And I think that's where the danger is. The danger is not in the words, because she heard the word dimag and she knew how it was said. Had she known how it was spelt, she wouldn't have had any trouble looking up the meaning.
And the same formula I have seen, like some people, like, when they're addressing someone, like even saying Penji, they will write with P, which pen, P or something like that. And that's like, no, it's not P, it's Penji, BH. So there
exactly.
are, but one thing, Kuljit, we have seen coming to the West is that there are more efforts happening in the Western countries. Nowadays, people have become more aware that they want to teach their children Punjabi, and more schools are opening. There are more initiatives. There are so many academies that's opening up, even the drama and theatre academy, where they're teaching about, Punjabi language, even Boliya and everything. So there are many efforts happening. At the same time, if we look at the condition of Punjabi language in Punjab itself, you say there is so much transformation that has happened from Punjabi to Hindi language. The teachers in the school, everyone, you go to any workplace, anywhere, you feel like automatically, speaking in Hindi language. And that's where people are actually considering themselves to be illiterate if they're talking in Punjabi. So what do you say about this state of mind?
I definitely agree with you, and I think we're very fortunate that we live in this age where, like you said, there are so many efforts out there. There are so many resources out there. So we're very fortunate in that sense. And like you, even when I go to Punjab in my in-laws as well, Benji, 'cause it sounded like a familiar story when what you were telling. We've always spoken Punjabi, and I don't necessarily come from my parents aren't necessarily they're not unpad, they're pade likhe. My mama, my non ke side are both pade likhe, but they in fact my mama ji is a master's in English, but ਉਹ Punjabi ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ, and we speak in Punjabi. But when I got married, and my in-laws are from Delhi, and they all speak in Hindi. And although I can, like I said, I can read and write the language, and perhaps my pronunciation isn't all that great, but I found myself when I was in India slipping into the Hindi. जब मैं उनसे बात करती थी तो मैं भी कोशिश करती थी हिंदी में बात करने की. And I was like, why are you doing that? And it comes from trying to fit in with them, because I was the only one speaking Punjabi. So, and I found why I was doing it, and that's what it is in the offices, in the workplace, like you said in India. It's because you're trying to fit in. But there's also a kahavat in Punjabi, jada dar gaya o mar gaya, right? So we have to push past this fear. We have to get over this fear. And again, these kahavats, documenting them has been a really empowering experience to me. It's been like my own little self-help and self-guidebook. Because what holds us back? It's always a fear of something. Whatever we're going to do, whether it's something, on the other, and again, you'll hear this being thrown around on social media. It's very common, I'll push past your fear, and, there's something. But in Punjabi, we've said it literally in those few words, jo dar gaya o mar gaya. Because what's on the other side of that fear? We don't speak Punjabi because we're in India. We fear that we might be judged. We fear that we might be perceived as something that we're not, or we want to be perceived as something other than what they might look at us. So I think when you push past that fear, and that's where your empowerment is. That's where you're going to encourage other people. You're going to make people curious, because they're going to see through your actions. You wouldn't be hired for the job if you weren't capable of doing it, right? So the language, speaking the Punjabi language, why can't we be able to speak Punjabi and English and Hindi and Farsi and any other language, in fact? And like I said at the beginning of the show, that it's important to respect other cultures, other heritages, but it begins with ourselves. When we can only really respect other people when we start respecting ourselves and our own culture and our own heritage. We need to once we take pride in that, once you get past that little fear of, I don't know what they're going to think of me. Now I've been married 12 years. And now when I go to India, I went to India in December last year, and I was speaking in Punjabi, and I was fearless in speaking Punjabi. I was quite proud of it. I've written a book, and it's in Punjabi, and it's about Punjabi kahafta. So, I was able to speak in that manner without fear of being judged as, being Pindu, inu kuch pata nahi hega, ye Punjabi bol diya. There was a comment made to me when I first got married by, somebody in my laws, "Eh lagdi ta hai nahi ki England to aayi hai." She doesn't look as though she's from England, or she doesn't sound as though she's from England. What? Because she speaks Punjabi. So it's really about owning your language and being inspired and being empowered by it, because it can really instill a huge sense of self-esteem.
I love it. It's amazing. Thank you so much. So what are your plans going forward? So you've got a second book coming out. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we've got book 2 coming out, and I think you can look at book 1 as it was a little bit of a taster, because like you say, lots of people weren't familiar with the kahafta and with this manner of speech. So with book 2, we really delved into, because we've shared a few kahafta already on the show, and we've spoken about how how much knowledge is hidden in them. So book 2 is where you've got the Kahavs. It's the same format. So you've got the Gurmukhi, you've got the Sharmukhi, and then you've got the English translate and the translation. And this time we really delve deeper into how we can apply these Kahavs in our life in a more practical way. Like there's one of my favorites. I'll give you a little, snippet from book 2. There's one in it, and it says, "Sajjana chodiye rang se." Shared Benji has heard it. "Fir bhi aavan kam." So sajjan means friends. Chodiye, we should leave friendships with grace, because you don't know, you might reconnect further on in your life. So this is really, it's a really beautiful thing. There's no sajjan chodiye rang se. Rang means colourful, right? In Punjabi, rang is a colour. So that's what I mean about the language being so metaphorical, and you can't encapsulate that in English. But if we were to apply that in our daily life, on our journeys of self-discovery and, as we evolve as human beings, we are inevitably going to outgrow people. We're going to outgrow people on our journey. So, those friendships should be left with grace and with love, with colour, so you might reconnect further on down in your journeys, in your lives. So that space should be left open in order for you to be able to do that. So there's a lot more gyan in the English translations, so that we can apply it in our daily lives, and how it can affect us, and how we can use them more practically. So not just a Kahav, oh yeah, that's part of my Punjabi language, I know that bit. And I think also the beauty of the book, and book 1 and book 2, which I didn't mention earlier, is the fact that it's in all 3 scripts. It's in Gurmukhi, it's in Sharmukhi, it's in English. So it's a book for everyone, from the youngest person in the family to the eldest person. It's a book that's going to bring people together. It's going to be something that we can bond over, that we can sit and the grandparents can be like, oh yes, I haven't heard that in a while. And it's just, I think it's so good. I've had people come and say to me, I was able to sit with my granddad and my grandparents, and we've really bonded. So I think it's amazing. And I'll let the reviews have been absolutely really positive as well, and encouraging too. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. Sajjan chodiye rang se fir bhi aavan kam.
Thank you. Where can the Sangat purchase your book? From where? From Akalis Publications, or is it on Amazon? Or
So you can go to www.carlishouse.com, and you can purchase directly from the publishing house. You can also go on Amazon. It's available worldwide. So it's it's really exciting. And book 2 will be coming out as well. So it's it's an exciting time.
So Kalis House.
Carlishouse.com. Yeah, go out and get yourselves a copy.
Yeah, definitely, I will now.
It's something you read. Sorry, the other thing is, sometimes people get a little bit daunted by getting a new book and having to read it, and I've got so much reading material. But the book is it's laid out in such a way that you could just open it up on any page. It's not a book that needs to be read from one cover, from cover to cover. So you can just open it up on any page, and you can just pick up a Kahavat. What's the Kahavat of the day? How am I going to use this in my life? How am I going to apply this to my day? So Kalis House Publishing, www.carlishouse.com.
Definitely. That's really good. Thank you so much for that. And I agree with you. We should celebrate our language. I'm going to definitely try. First, I'm going to get my mum to speak Punjabi in the house.
Right.
Because, if the old generation do, then it's easy for everybody to. But yeah, we definitely should celebrate our language. You're right. And it seems like an affirmation book, really, but a Punjabi affirmation,
Yes, exactly. It's exactly that.
Yes, definitely. So we're really happy that you came onto the show today. Thank you so much, Kuljit Kaur, for sharing your experience and your journey with us all. If anyone wants to know any more, then please get in touch with her. And how can people get in touch with you on social media?
So I have got a page set up on Instagram, and it's called Punjabi Revival. So you can connect with me on Punjabi Revival. So I try to post, words that aren't spoken so much, and I try to post little bits of our culture and share bits on the Punjabi Revival page. So definitely you can get in touch with me on there.
And Benji, is there any last comments from yourself, Grinda?
No, I think I've just refreshed my memories of childhood and connecting with these proverbs, and I'll be actually rethinking of the ways to now teach that to my daughter as well, and communicate more. I think this was really interesting topic. I'm gonna do a little bit research again today on my favorite proverbs. So thank you, Kuljit, for coming on to the show.
Thank you
Yes.
so much for having me. It's been an absolute delight, and you've been so warm and welcoming. So thank you.
No, thank you so much for coming today. We're really appreciative. And thank you all for whoever tuned in and who will tune in later as well. We'll see you again next week. If you've got any comments or a specific topic that you would like covered, then please send us an email, hello@thekaurshow.com. And if you want to see any of our previous shows, then please visit our website, thekaurshow.com. Thank you, everybody. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.